Should the New York Mets look to extend Pete Alonso during the offseason? Let's talk about it. And well, welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I'm Wa2K99. Thank you as always for taking the time to watch these videos. Hey, reminder, join us every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. We'll talk about whatever is going on in the world of New York sports. Every Wednesday night for a while, we're going to be reviewing One Jets Drive and Hard Knocks. Compare one to the other, talk about which show was better, and who knows what else we might talk about. Mets, Yankees, Rangers, Devils, Islanders, Knicks, Nets, Giants, whatever might be going on, we'll talk about it. Now, I want to spend some time today and talk about Pete Alonso. There's been a lot of talk right now from a lot of Mets fans. Why haven't the Mets extended Pete Alonso? You even have a contingent of Met fans who feel like the Mets should explore trading him and maybe work on getting some prospects back for him. Just if they're going to rebuild, really rebuild. Now, myself personally, I've been a fan of this guy ever since he was Peter Alonso, and the Mets drafted him in the second round out of Florida back in 2016. And the more I watched him, I saw a smooth, confident, powerful swing that I'm not used to seeing from Mets hitters. If you're a Mets fan, you're used to really good pitching and so-so lineups at best, but you're not used to these feared sluggers. And in the 5 years that Pete Alonso has been in the majors, he has become one of the most dominant position players the Mets have ever had, maybe the most dominant. You could make that case. Now, he's a free agent after 2024, but to me, the Mets have to make a decision this offseason. You cannot let an Aaron Judge situation happen here where he hits the free agent market after the 2024 season and possibly leaves. I know Aaron Judge stayed with the Yankees, but who knows if Alonso will? You don't think the Yankees wouldn't love to snatch him away from Queens? Teams like the Cubs, the Red Sox, they all make sense. I know the Dodgers have Freddie-Freeman. Think they wouldn't plug him at DH? Now, the parties remain committed to Pete Alonso being a Met for pretty much for his career. Now, we'll talk about some of the arguments for extending him. Just look at his accolades. Look at the resume. Rookie of the Year in 2019. A three-time All-Star. He led the major leagues in home runs in 2019 with 53, a Mets team record. He led Major League Baseball in RBIs in 2022 with 131. That's also a Mets record. He has hit 35 home runs 4 different times for the Mets. There is no other Met in the history of this franchise, this 60-plus year franchise, to ever do that. And I'm telling you, if it wasn't for COVID, the COVID-shortened season in 2020, he might have done it all 5 times. Now, this year, he has 35 home runs, 87 RBIs. Both are second in the National League, and that's after missing several weeks with an injury. More on that later. For his career, he has 181 home runs. So he is on pace to break the Mets record. Darryl Strawberry holds the all-time Mets record with 252, so Alonso is 71 behind him. And currently, he is 5th all-time in Mets home runs. He's only 11 behind Hojo, Howard Johnson, for 4th place. Pete Alonso, as long as he stays healthy, is going to break this record in 2024. If he stays, and that's the caveat. Okay? Now, his defense, he's not exactly Keith Hernandez by any stretch of the imagination. But you know what? He's really made it a commitment to become a reliable, dependable first baseman. He's lost some weight over the last year or two, and he's definitely gotten better. He has gotten, he will dive for ground balls that early on in his career he would not have gotten to. Throwing can be a little erratic, but he is pretty good at scooping errant throws. And you know what? With this infield, especially with what we've seen at third base from the Mets this year, you need a first baseman who can scoop these errant throws. But the other thing you have to think about is Pete Alonso plays. Now, aside from Charlie Morton's on-purpose beaning of him earlier this season, he plays. Alonso is expected to be out a month this year. He came back in 2 weeks, probably too soon. but his toughness and his durability, to me, that is something that you cannot overlook. You know, it's easy to take a player for granted when they're in the lineup every day. Look at Francisco Lindor. You know, he had played 223 straight games for the Mets. That is a team record. And then he had to miss the one game. And you could see the difference when the Mets had to put in Danny Mendick and Jonathan Arauz. I'm looking for any excuse to say that name on a video, when they had to put them as their middle infield. Now, as far as the arguments against extending him, I've seen really two things here that I've been seeing from the critics. Number one is first base, the fact that Alonso plays first base. You know what? First base is becoming a little bit like running back is in the NFL. As time's gone on, as analytics play a more and more prominent role in the sport, first base is kind of getting devalued. I'm going to put this in context. If we look at first baseman contracts, okay? In 2014, Miguel Cabrera signed a deal with Detroit. 8 years, $248 million. He played first base at the time. Now he's really a DH. But that set the record for the most money given over a total contract to a first baseman. Also set a record for average annual value with $248 million total, $31 million per year. Now, when it comes to position players, it's the positions like shortstop, outfield. That's what makes the big bucks. Look at, Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, Shohei Ohtani, Carlos Correa, Giancarlo Stanton, Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, all these guys. If you look at the top 10 highest paid position players in 2023, with the exception of Cabrera, okay, all of them, 9 of them play either shortstop, third base, or outfield. 9 of the 10. That's something to point out. After Cabrera, the highest paid first baseman is Freddie-Freeman at $27 million. Then you have Paul Goldschmidt at $26 million. Now, here's the thing with that. Freeman and Goldschmidt both had their contracts begin when they turned 32 years old. Alonso would play his first free agent season at 30 years old. That would be in 2025, so he's a little bit younger. But keep in mind, Freeman and Goldschmidt they're a little bit more all-around players than Alonso is. Okay, so Freeman's now 33. He's stolen 16 bases out of 17 attempts. Paul Goldschmidt, 28 for 30 in stealing bases. And they're better defensive first basemen than Alonso is. Both have been MVPs. Pete has not been one yet. But I will say this. If Alonso hadn't gotten hurt, who knows? Maybe he would have had an opportunity at MVP. I know it's kind of difficult to give it to a player whose team is this pathetic, but I really feel like when Alonso got hit, when he got beamed, the team really started to go downhill. Now, here's the thing. I don't think Alonso's going to want to hear any of that. He doesn't want comparisons to first baseman. He wants to be compared to Aaron Judge, the other premier New York slugger in town. Now, as far as the Mets' perspective on this goes with these negotiations, I think what they're going to want to try to do is develop a pipeline where they can replace players if they need to. Okay, certainly they're going to acknowledge that Pete Alonso is a star, but there have been a lot of first basemen who've received big contracts and they immediately proved to be bad investments. You can think about players like Chris Davis, Ryan Howard, things like that. But there is, that hybrid strategy where, the Mets can make one more long-term effort before the walk year. Now, let's look at Aaron Judge. We'll make that Aaron Judge comparison. Before last season began, Aaron Judge rejected an 8-year, $230 million offer. Okay, and then Judge bet on himself, set the AL home run record, cashed in at 9 years, $360 million. Maybe Alonso does do that, and it's completely his place to do that if he wants to. So it's tough to see exactly where this is going to go. You wonder if Alonso wants to bet on himself or if he really wants the long-term security and he wants to take advantage of it now. Now, there's one other argument against extending Alonso that I've seen, and this is speculation. Again, it's only speculation about the Mets locker room, the dissension in the locker room, and who is causing the problems. Well, no one seems to know who's causing the issues. Okay, this is all coming from radio show hosts, from social media. There's no proof about any real dissension, nothing like it whatsoever. I think if there is a problem, I think a lot of it has to do with the changes in the pitching rotation. Last year we were hearing stories about, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Chris Bassett, talking with the young pitchers like David Peterson and Tyler McGill. They'd have these, little huddles after every inning saying, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. You don't hear about that as much. The Mets replaced DeGrom with Verlander, and then you had Kodai Senga. There's a little bit of a language barrier, and then they lose Chris Bassett, and they lose Taijuan Walker as well. So I could see a difference there, but I don't know if that carries over to the position players. But the whole thing, wouldn't you expect there to be some issues with chemistry in the locker room right now, and frustration and bad attitude and anger? I would expect that, the way that this season has gone. Because I'm somebody who believes that winning breeds chemistry and team harmony, not the other way around. So yes, I expect issues in the locker room, especially right now. So to me, here's my thoughts on this overall. Pete Alonso is somebody you're going to build your lineup around. He is a slugger, that comes along to a franchise once in a generation. He demands the viewer's attention when he is at bat. And the Mets haven't had a player like that since, I would say, Darryl Strawberry and probably Mike Piazza. With all due respect to David Wright, very good all-around player. But he didn't have that sizzle, that flamboyance, that panache, that extra juice where he could demolish a baseball, carry a team on his back for a week or two at a time, like Pete recently did in the Cubs series, when he had 4 home runs against the Cubs, for crying out loud. So as far as a contract, what would I do? For me, a very fair offer would be $30 million a year for 7 years. It would make him the highest paid first baseman in baseball, and he'd be a free agent again at age 36. He might want to sign an additional contract. But maybe Pete has this thing where he wants to be the highest paid Mets position player. Maybe that's the beginning point for him and Team Alonso. Because remember, Francisco Lindor is making $34 million a year. So if he wants that, if Alonso wants to be paid more than Lindor, I would offer the same total value, $35 million a year for 6 years. That's still $210, and then maybe you can add a vesting option or two based off incentives, maybe an MVP finish, a certain number of home runs. But I really think this better be done during the offseason. I have no expectation this would happen during the season. I wouldn't expect negotiations to be going on right now, but I do expect this to get done. I want this to get done during the offseason. Because remember, the Mets last year, they re-signed Brandon Nimmo. They re-signed Edwin Diaz. They extended Jeff McNeil, and it's time to do the same for the face of the franchise, their premier slugger, and that's number 20, Pete Alonso. Well, those are my thoughts on Alonso and the contract situation. I want to see your thoughts. Put them right down there in the comments. Should the Mets extend Alonso during this offseason, or do you let it play it out and, see what happens? Or do you actually consider trading him? Would you actually do that? Just a reminder again, join us every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. for Wednesday Night Live. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you right back here with more content from you know where, the Wicker Chair.